Hello guys, Luke here, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another build guide video. This is only my second build guide video on the channel. My first build guide was for the Ryzen Mini ITX system that I've been using now for almost a year, and I built that for just under $1,000 Australian. But this time, in this video, we're doing two builds actually. I'm doing the cheapest possible build I can buy in Australia right now that is suitable for gaming, that is. So I could build a cheaper system, but this one will be able to do some light 1080p gaming, and I believe it's the cheapest way of doing it. It comes in at just under $500, about 460 bucks to be exact. But we've made a few compromises, of course, to bring it down to that sort of price. And my second build for this video is going to be basically my dream system, which comes in at a whopping $3,659. So it is quite an expensive system, but if I was to go buy my current, like with current market prices, current parts out there right now, if I were to go buy my dream system, it would cost around that price, like $3,659. So without further ado guys, let's get straight into the video. I've got here our first part for the cheapest PC. I'm going to start off with the cheapest possible gaming related PC you can buy, you can build, I mean. We're going to start off with the case. We have the Thermaltake Versa H15. It's a micro ATX gaming case. Apparently it's a gaming case, so I don't see why it's a gaming case at all, but basically I chose this because it is the cheapest case on Centrecom. Oh, by the way guys, I am doing both build guides today on Centrecom, which are based locally to me. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and Centrecom's a chain of computer stores that is close to me, so I'm doing all the builds today on this site. So you could find these parts cheaper elsewhere, especially online, probably from online retailers, but bear in mind that none of these prices are going to have postage on top, because my closest Centrecom store is only 1 kilometer away, so keep that in mind. Anyway, we're going to start with the case. It comes with a 450 watt power supply built in, and I believe the power supply is not even 80 plus rated. It doesn't say it anywhere in the description, so it's not that power efficient, but I mean, it'll get the job done. If you're going for price only, like price is your #1 priority, then I recommend you go with this case and power supply combo. It's only $88. You get a pretty decent case. It's a micro ATX case, and you get a decent power supply as well, since our system today is not going to actually have a graphics card. Anyway, that is the case guys. You can see a few images here. It's nothing special. There's no side window either, so you don't have to worry about the ugly power supply cables either. They actually don't look too bad. If that's the cables that come with the power supply, that's actually quite good. It is a light power PSU that's included in this case. Anyway, let's move on to the motherboard. So keep in mind, this is a micro ATX system, so I had to choose a micro ATX motherboard. We're going with AMD AM4 platform for this build, mostly because of the CPU, which I'll get to a bit later. Basically, the CPU we're going to choose for this build's an AM4 CPU that includes Vega graphics. But yeah, as I said, we'll get to that a bit later. We're starting off with Asus Prime A320MK AM4 Micro ATX motherboard. And I chose this board again because it is the cheapest motherboard on the site. It is the first item that comes up if you list by cheapest to most priciest motherboards. This is the cheapest. And comes in at $85. It's only got 2 DIMM slots. We'll actually only be populating 1 DIMM slot, so this system will be aimed at like a future upgrade. Obviously this is a system where you can get started with gaming, like entry level, and then you can upgrade slowly to it. Like you can add a graphics card later, you can add another stick of RAM, you can add more storage later. That's the idea of this build. But that's why it is so cheap as well. With we're starting off very, very entry level. So yeah, I chose this motherboard because yeah, price, and because it does have an M.2 drive slot as well on this motherboard. So we're going to be using that as our only drive. So basically it's nothing special. It's not going to really fit with a color scheme or anything like that. But yeah, we're going with this motherboard for the build. And let's move on to storage now. As I said, this motherboard has an M.2 slot, and we're going to populate that with this Western Digital Green 240 gig M.2 drive. It is not going to be an ideal SSD for gaming because it doesn't have the highest read and write speed. It's basically on par with a normal SATA SSD, so it's not going to be terrible. You're still going to be able to play games and load games brilliantly, brilliantly fast. And for only $79, you're getting 240 gig of storage as your first drive, your main drive, so that's not too bad. And of course, you can upgrade by adding more SATA drives in the future if you want to upgrade to this build. So basically, you're just starting off with this drive, and you can upgrade a bit later. Let's move on to the RAM for this build, and this is where I've had to cut some corners guys, because as you all probably know if you've been looking at PC parts in the last year or so, RAM prices have been astronomical, which is why for only 4 gig of plain looking PCB RAM we are getting for $69. It's ridiculous price. This is only 4 gig stick, 2400 megahertz. The speed isn't too bad, but the timings are a bit lax. It's a CL17 timings stick of RAM, so it's not going to be quite as tight as I would like. I would like CL14 timings, but I mean, you can't be fussy when you're going with like price is your #1 priority for a build. So we're going with 4 gigs of RAM. We're going to see how we go with 4 gigs of RAM. Of course, this only populates one of the 2 DIMM slots on the motherboard, so you can add another DIMM later to make 8 gigs, or you can sell this, buy an 8 gig kit of RAM later, or buy a 16 gig kit of RAM later. But of course, we are all waiting for those RAM prices to come down. It is just astronomically priced. If I were to go for 8 gig kit for this system, I'd be spending about $145, so just over double this price to get double the RAM. So I just thought I'd start with 4 gig, and this keeps the price also under $500 for this build, which I was trying to aim at. But anyway, that is the RAM stick for this system. Just single channel to start off with, add another stick later to get dual channel. But let's move on to the CPU, and I'm gonna have to probably discuss you guys a few things here as well, because it doesn't come without a few flaws, if you will. We're going with the 2200G, which has Vega graphics inbuilt, which is why I'm not choosing a GPU for this build, because we can simply use the Vega graphics built into the CPU to game. Of course, you won't be able to run at the highest graphical settings or more than 1080p resolution either, because the CPU is not designed to handle, you know, high resolution gaming and high frame rate gaming. It's basically just to get you started. So this is ideal for games like CSGO, Rocket League, League of Legends, sort of Dota, you know, very easy to run games. So anyway, we're going with the 2200G with Vega graphics. It also comes with a Wraith Stealth cooler, which is also why I chose this CPU. So we've got our cooling, our graphics, and our CPU all in one price of $139, which is brilliant. I'm actually comparing it to the Ryzen 3 1200 processor you see here, which is $133. Now this also comes with the Wraith Stealth cooler, but it does not have graphics built in. Whereas if you spend an extra like $7 to $139, you get Vega graphics built in. So that is definitely worth the upgrade. Mind you see this big red flag here, which is a motherboard BIOS update is needed for the CPU to work with AM4 motherboards. That is because this CPU came out after a lot of AM4 motherboards got released, and so there needs to be a BIOS update applied to your motherboard. So even this motherboard here, you see the note here, BIOS update is needed for the motherboard to work with AMD Ryzen 2200G and 2400G. So this is one of the drawbacks. You're going to need to update the BIOS on your motherboard first before this CPU will even work, which means you actually need to put in another AM4 CPU into the motherboard first, update the BIOS, and then you can use the 2200G. Fortunately for me guys, if I build this system, and I'm probably looking at building this for you guys as well, making a build video on it, I own the Ryzen 3 2200 you see here, so I will simply take this out of my mini ITX Ryzen system and put it into the A320M here, update the BIOS, and then I'll have to remove my Ryzen 3 1200 and insert the 2200G, and then we should be all good. That is one of the downsides. You've simply got to have another CPU or borrow a friend's CPU that's AM4 platform to upgrade your BIOS on your motherboard before this will actually work with it. Unless you, of course, buy a more modern motherboard that's already come out after the 2200G has released. But anyway, we're going with this CPU and graphics combo. And that's basically the end of the build guide, guys, for the cheapest PC. And I'll just bring up my spreadsheet here, guys. I've made a quick little Excel spreadsheet, as you can see. Cheapest PC, the total price comes to $460. So, as I said, you could increase your RAM capacity to 8 gig, but that'll put you, instead of 69, you'll be spending about 115, which if we calculate that, it comes to just over 500. So it's up to you guys if you feel like it's worth it getting 8 gig of RAM. I think it is worth it just going up another $45 or so to get 8 gig of RAM, because it does make a difference in gaming. But if we keep it at the $69 for the 4 gig stick, it makes it a very attractive $460 price for the whole system. That's case, power supply, motherboard, storage, graphics, CPU, cooler, everything. Just only 5 components for $460, so it's not too bad. I am actually looking at building this system in the future, guys, so stay tuned on the channel. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and you'll get to see this build in the near future. I can't promise a date yet, but yeah, I'm looking at doing this build in the future very soon, and I'll probably even once I'm done, give this PC to a family member or something, because I don't really need the system at all. I've already got a couple of systems here in the studio. So that is the cheapest PC build guide for this video, guys, so far. And anyway, I'm going to close all these tabs now because we're going on to my dream PC. Now, my dream PC is also going to be based on the AM4 platform, because you know, AMD just has such competitive products right now on the market, it's really taking some good market share back from Intel with a lot of their products, which is why I'm going with Ryzen platform. We're starting off with our motherboard here. We've got the Gigabyte AB350 Gaming 3 motherboard. Basically, I chose this because it is one of the cheapest gaming-oriented motherboards. It has 4 DIMM slots, which we're actually going to be populating all 4 slots. But yeah, that is the AB350 Gaming 3 motherboard for $149. So this motherboard's pretty well spec'd out. I would have liked a second M.2 slot because I would have liked to have 2 M.2 drives in the system and just have no SATA or hard drives at all. But these motherboards cost a lot more money. And also this motherboard doesn't have USB Type-C. I would have liked to see a USB Type-C port on the back as well. My current Intel system actually does have a USB Type-C port, which I use all the time. So that's kind of a thing I'm gonna miss a little bit, but I really want to keep that price down as well on certain parts, because even though it is my dream PC, I'm still looking at it as if I had to actually go and buy the system right now with the money that I have. I would like this motherboard. I don't want to spend $400 on a motherboard where you only get a few little features extra here and there. So yeah, we're going with the AB350 Gaming 3 AM4 motherboard for Ryzen. And speaking of Ryzen, we are going to get pretty much the top Ryzen chip you can get right now, which is the 2700X. It is an 8-core, 16-thread Ryzen CPU. And basically, I wanted to move up my core count. I'm currently running at 6700K on my current system. It's clocked at 4.4 gigahertz, which is not too bad, but it is only a 4-core, 8-thread system. And when I want to do heavy multitasking or editing, it does get a bit slow sometimes, and it is aging a little bit. That is also to do with my current cooling situation. I've actually got to upgrade that, which might be another video soon. We're going to go with a cooler, third-party cooler, which is going to be the Cooler Master Master Liquid ML240R RGB all-in-one cooler. And I chose this because you've got really nice RGB fans, basically. You've also got RGB on the actual cooler itself, which I love this look. It looks awesome, and I've heard great things about this cooler. And the price is really reasonable too, $135 for a 240mm cooler, which is great. Unfortunately, this product's only available, it's nearly out of stock. It might be out of stock. Yeah, it's pretty much out of stock nearly everywhere, guys. So that tells you why it's so popular. It's because it's such a good price for this sort of performance. Next, we're going to go into the RAM, and this is where, again, our wallet's going to hurt a little bit here, guys. We're going with a Corsair Vengeance kit of 32 gig DDR4, 2666 megahertz. I would have liked to go a higher speed in regards to megahertz on the RAM, but the price just gets so high. I'm already spending here $549 on the RAM. This is for 4 DIMMs, so it'll give us 32 gig. And yeah, as I said before, if you want to upgrade to 64 gig, you're gonna have to sell all these DIMMs, then buy a 64 gig kit of RAM. But I feel like 32 gig is plenty, even if you're doing heavy editing work, multitasking. I feel like 32 gig is plenty. It's got white LED, which won't really match our motherboard. I mean, our motherboard's black and red. So again, I'm not trying to match colors here. I mean, it will match. It'll end up being like a black, red, and white system. So I guess it'll have like 3 different gradients, different colors in the system. But yeah, that's going to be our kit of RAM. I'll just show you a few images here. It only shows like 2 DIMMs in the main picture for some reason, but it is a 4-stick kit of RAM. You can see here 4x8 gig. So that is the RAM. Let's move on to storage now. We've got here a M.2 drive, a 970 EVO 1TB NVMe drive, and basically this is one of the fastest drives you can get. The reads and write speeds on these drives are just excellent. I think the read speed's about 3500 megabytes a second, and writes are about 2300 megabytes a second. So brilliant read and write speed. I probably will never actually max the read and write speeds of this drive. It is just so blazingly fast, but I like to so-called future-proof a little bit in my systems when I build them. You know, when spending this much money, you know, I want to make sure it can last me well into the future. So who knows how fast storage will need to be for certain programs and games in the future. This drive could probably go into many more future systems that I build when I upgrade. So that's why I chose this drive, and that's why it's $579, guys. Again, at a very expensive part. But as I said, if I was building my dream system right now, I would go for this drive for sure. There are cheaper 1TB NVMe drives than this drive, but they're not as fast. For example, you can go with a Intel 600p 1TB NVMe drive, which I actually have in my current system, and they're about $130 less than this. They're about $469 or so, like somewhere around there. So you can get these cheaper, but this is the king when it comes to read and write, basically, without going too expensive. You can get a 1TB 970 Pro, but then you are reaching like $800 Australian. You're talking then, so next to like nearly $300 for a little bit faster speed. So I wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend the Evo if you're going for a very fast NVMe drive. On to our next storage device. We're only going to have 2 storage devices in this system. So this is the first drive, which is going to populate our M.2 drive. And then we're going with a FireCuda 2TB SSHD. And I chose this basically because it's around the same price as a 2TB hard drive if I was adding like a Seagate Barracuda or something. But a FireCuda gives us that little bit more of SSD storage, SSD cache. Let's move on to the creme de la creme of this build, which is of course the GPU, which is going to be of course a 1080 Ti from Asus. It is the ROG Strix Gaming, pretty much the best of the best card you can get. And not a bad price, $299 Australian is not too bad for a 1080 Ti. You can definitely spend more. You can spend up to $2,000 on a 1080 Ti actually, especially if you want to get your card pre-fitted with water cooling. You're going to be spending almost $2,000 Australian for those sorts of cards. But I feel like, you know, if you're going with an air-cooled card, this is about the best price you can pay for a very, very decent 1080 Ti. That is the GPU for this build, guys, and we're going to put all that inside a Thermaltake View 31 tempered glass case. It is a mid-tower case, but it should still fit our full ATX motherboard. So basically I chose this case because it's got 3 nice RGB fans. It's quite a neutral color scheme as well, so you can pretty much fit whatever color scheme you want in this case. Let's go to the front picture here. You can see how it's tempered glass on the front as well, so you can actually see the RGB fans at the front, through the front of the case, so I love that feature. Also, it'll go well with our AIO cooler, because we can make this system basically any color we want. Of course, our motherboard, if we go back here, is going to be black and red, so our system overall is probably going to be like a black and red and white system, just because of that white LED on the RAM. And to power this whole system, guys, we've got the Thermaltake Tough Power 850 watt 80 plus gold power supply. 850 watt for this system should be plenty because our 1080 Ti requires roughly 250 to 300 watts of power, depending if you're overclocking or not. And our CPU is only a 95 watt part, so we should have plenty of power left over. I probably could have gone with a smaller capacity power supply. I could have gone with like a 650 watt, but I thought I'd future-proof a little bit in case I want to add another card of some sort, like another PCI card, or I want to add more drives. Then I've got some wiggle room here to add more components and not go over the power limit. So here again is my spreadsheet that I made for this video. You can see the total price here, slightly under $3,700. If I was going to spend my own money right now and buy my dream system, I would build this system. Of course, my current system is no slouch either. It has a 1080 Ti in it already. If I was going to do this sort of system, I would probably just migrate a lot of parts from this system to this new one. And then I would buy some cheaper parts to still keep my main system here as my secondary and still keep it as quite a decent gaming PC. So I probably wouldn't go out and buy all these parts and build another PC since my current system is pretty good as it is. This is my dream system I would build right now. But anyway guys, this does it for my build guide video, the 2 systems. As I said earlier in the video guys, I'm probably going to build the cheapest PC you can see here in the Excel spreadsheet. Because it is going to be a cheap system, and I just love building systems, so that's basically what I'm going to do for probably the next tech video that you see on the channel, or it could be a while from now, I'm not sure. Anyway guys, I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, leave a like down below, subscribe for more content like this, and I will see you guys around the channel. Alright, have a good one.